Hello again, my name is Mark Halsey. I'm here with Fiona Halsey and together we are Halsey Legal. The topic of discussion today is ASIC notices, in particular Section 19 notices, and I'd like to kick it off by asking Fiona to indicate what is a Section 19 notice and who's likely to receive a Section 19 notice.
Well, I could give you a really technical answer in respect of what a Section 19 notice is, but basically it's an ASIC grilling. So that's really the best description of it, is ASIC grilling.
Yeah.
And they can issue it to anybody who they think could assist them with either an investigation that's already going on or investigation that they're planning to have. So it can go to quite a broad range of people.
Right. And what's contained in the Section 19 notice?
Okay, so normally the Section 19 notice is around 8 pages, and it basically tells you that you've got to appear at a particular time in a particular place, and it gives you a starting time, but importantly, no end time.
Right.
So you have to come, and you have to come to the ASIC location, and then you'll be quizzed.
Okay, so there's a set location that's spelled out in the notice?
Yeah, there is that. One thing that's interesting is that with the COVID situation, it has moved around a bit, okay? And sometimes there have been circumstances where you've got people who are being examined. So the examinee, so you, the person who receives the notice, has to go to a room.
So when you say an examination, what exactly are you getting at?
An examination is an interview.
Right.
Okay, so I think cross-examination is probably a better description of it. And you have to go you might have to go to a room, and sometimes they'll have, so then there's always at least 2 ASIC officers asking questions, okay, and sometimes more. And you have got a circumstance where you go into a room and that's set up with a recording device. And you'll always have at least 1 ASIC officer in the room. You may have others in the room with you, or you may have them on screens. I've even actually been to a Section 19 interview in a hotel.
Right.
So it can be in all kinds of locations.
Okay, so what normally happens during the Section 19? You said it's a grilling, but in practical terms, what does that mean?
Okay. So what happens is that you arrive at the office, and then you go through whatever is the current COVID protocol. And then what happens is then you go into the examination room, or the interview room is probably in more common use. And then what you do is you generally have to provide some identification, so they know they're interviewing the right person.
Sure.
And then if you're the interviewee, you're required to take an oath or swear an affirmation.
Yep.
So it's serious stuff. And then you are generally issued also with a secrecy order, so that you're not allowed to discuss what happens in that room with anyone except your lawyer. Okay.
So obviously a lawyer is permitted to be present during the questioning?
Yes, you are entitled to have to bring a lawyer with you, and put it bluntly, you'd be mad if you didn't.
Okay.
Absolutely. So you definitely, it's incredibly helpful to have someone there. Firstly, because it's quite an intimidating environment. They are recording the interview, so it's and you've given this statement on oath. You can't refuse to answer a question. So what you can do beforehand is you can say privilege before it. Okay, but that's quite a difficult thing to keep in your head to do. And your solicitor who's been in, well, sometimes you've got a solicitor who's been in Section 19 interviews before, which is important, has been through this process before, and can help you to be able to manage it. Because it's quite confronting, because if you go by yourself, as I said, I've never been in one with less than 2 ASIC officers, and what they typically have is a very long list of questions that they've worked out, often over months, and you're on the spot answering them. So it's quite a intimidating environment, certainly.
Okay. If it's that intimidating and it's a grilling, is it possible just to stop the interview and walk out?
No.
Okay.
No. And there are many cases where people have wanted to do that. particularly when the interviews have gone on for a long time. So sometimes the interviews, so as I said, you get a starting time but not an ending time. Sometimes these interviews go for days. And I've had circumstances where I've been with a person who's being examined and they've just become incredibly angry from several days of being asked what they think of as the same questions, and often about things they're not that comfortable about. But that depends on the person. So earlier you asked about the kind of person who might attend a Section 19, okay? And there can be some people who attend a Section 19 who are they are actually the focus of the inquiry, but then there are often people who get Section 19s who are not the focus at all, and who are just there because ASIC thinks they can help with some information that ASIC can kind of use to actually develop the investigation. I would say, as a general rule of thumb, that the earlier in the investigation that you get the Section 19, the better off you are, because it's more likely they're not that interested in you. The later up the pyramid that your Section 19 is, the more concerning it is.
Right. So, if you say things during the Section 19, can you change them afterwards?
No, you've said it on oath, and it's what's done is done. Okay, and you can't avoid the questions. What does happen I would say, probably most of the Section 19s I've been in, is that ASIC then creates a record of interview, which in common language would be called a transcript. And then that record of interview is then put in typed paper and sent to you. And then you are required to consider it and sign it. You can't change what you wrote. I mean, the only thing that you could do is if there'd been some, for example, they've written Jones Street and you'd said Johnson Street, something like that you could change. But other than that, it is what it is.
You can't take back what you've said, essentially.
You can't. And the other thing is that transcript is potentially available not only to ASIC, but it's potentially available also to solicitors for people who've got some other matter connected to it, which is a particular concern if you've got any situation with civil litigation. So those transcripts, ASIC will generally consult with you before releasing it, but they don't require your permission.
Right. Well, that's all very interesting. So thank you for that breakdown of the Section 19. It has been very, very useful. And yes, thank you.
Okay, well, thanks for asking the questions. And I genuinely hope that no one who's watching this gets a Section 19 notice.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.